Don't write books. And that's coming from a guy who's published over a dozen different books across multiple genres. Now, my journey from page 1 to a 90,000 word manuscript wasn't easy. I spent my early 30s trying to write the big book, but fiction was out of the question. Why? You see, I discovered that authors are best writing what they love to read. And in my case, that's non-fiction. My favorite types of non-fiction books included personal development, business, creativity, writing, and psychology, some of which you can see behind me. So I got up at 5 a.m. for a year to write a book all about creativity. Draft 1 of my book clocked in at a whopping 90,000 words. To put that in context, the average length of a non-fiction book in these genres is usually 50 to 70,000 words. I had some work to do, so I hired a book editor using a service called Reedsy, and we spent a month chopping, editing, and condensing my messy first draft. Meanwhile, I told a book marketer that I was self-publishing my book. She recommended I break my big book down into a series of 3 short books instead. A series of books about creativity, if you will. I followed her advice and I called my series The Power of Creativity. I wrote these particular books for writers and artists. The series comprises 3 short books, and I gave away book 1 for free. Why? That free book helped me sell more copies of book 2 and 3. But I also created a single version of the book that readers could buy too. And I didn't stop there. I created a large print version and even an audiobook. And my series of creativity books did okay at first. To date, it sold over 100,000 copies, in part because I gave away book 1 for free. The lesson here: readers in different markets consume books in different formats. Some like them long, some short, some on Kindle, and some print. So if you must write a book, you're going to have to create multiple formats if you want to sell. And you're going to have to consider translating your book too. To be honest, I should take my own advice here and translate my book into Portuguese. Why? Well, my book is popular in Brazil for some reason, which I can't quite figure out. And Amazon sometimes emails me and asks if I'd like to appear in an exclusive promotion for that market. I always say yes because it helps me sell more copies of the book. Now, writing The Power of Creativity and selling some copies gave me confidence that I could earn a living writing online, but it wasn't the fastest or easiest way to do it. And to be honest, it probably gave me a bit too much confidence because I wasn't quite prepared for what would happen after writing a flop. I sold my book on Amazon, and I also sell it direct to readers using a service called PayHip, which I recommend. If you're going to write a book, you can earn a little bit more by cutting Amazon out if you have an existing audience. I'll explain more how to do that later in the video. So why am I saying don't write books? Well, 96% of books sell less than 1,000 copies. And take it from me, writing a book that doesn't sell is nauseating. Now, I didn't set out to write a flop. I figured I had a great idea for a new book, a book that readers would love. You see, for years, I wrote a popular productivity column for Forbes. I interviewed dozens of entrepreneurs, CEOs, authors, executives, and thought leaders for my column. These included people like Michael Jordan's mentor, Howard H. White, and James Clear of Atomic Habits fame. And then one day when my column came to an end, I decided to take all of my articles and interviews and turn them into a business book. Surely if people read my column, they'd buy my book. So I spent most of 2019 getting up early and rewriting my articles into book chapters. And at the time, I was also working as a copywriter for a corporate company. So I leaned heavily on my experiences on the job, and I included insights and advice about managing your time when you have a busy job and getting stuff done at work. My formula for this book: personal stories plus research. The book is called This Is Working. Focus on what matters and get the results you deserve. I even commissioned an audiobook using ACX, which is Amazon's audiobook program for indie authors. Did my entire year of hard work pay off? Well, I earned $1,000 from this book that first year. And today that book sells a few copies each month. It has a few reasonable reviews too. One guy even said, "My book is a treasure trove of good ideas." But let's be honest, those minuscule Amazon royalties are hardly enough to justify the dozens of hours I spent on the book and the money I paid to self-publish it. That's right, hiring an editor, book cover designer, and proofreader. To be honest, I could have earned much more by creating something else. Sure, I felt sick about the book not selling, but do I regret writing a book about productivity and time management? No. You see, I was geeking out about all of that stuff back in 2018 and 2019, and even though my book didn't sell, I enjoyed writing it. You see, if you're going to write a book, you have to remember that not every creative project will work out. Even Stephen King had to get past writing his flop, The Tommyknockers. After a creative failure like this, I sometimes like rereading fun quotes, like this one from the Bhagavad Gita. You have no right to the fruits of your work. Desire for the fruits of your work must never be your motive in working. In other words, if you're going to write a book, don't expect to make a lot of money directly from it. But there are other ways, which I'll cover in a moment. That said, if I were to write a business book again, here's what I'd do differently. I'd spend more time validating my idea with an audience of ideal readers. I'd also spend a week or two writing some rough draft chapters. And rather than wasting hours, days, weeks and months polishing these, I'd send early drafts to beta readers and ask them, what do you think? If they liked it, I'd ask them to pre-order the book at a discount. And I'd only invest time and resources in writing a book like this if enough people spent money telling me I want it. You see, spending money is key. Many people or readers will say they'll buy something from you, but then they'll put off buying it. If I followed this approach, I could just invest a week or two into a creative project and not months of my entire life. I'd have also engaged a development editor sooner, and I'd have invested more time in marketing my book before publishing it. For example, doing podcast tours. Now, if you want to pick up this book and take charge of your time, it's also for sale on Amazon and I sell it direct. Now, I've told you what I felt like after writing a flop. A book almost no one bought. It sucked. So for my next project, I hacked it. I wanted to write a bestseller. I didn't want to spend a year or two doing it, and I wanted to increase my chances of success. To write a bestseller, I knew I needed help. It was around 2020 and I had some extra money from my writing business. So I hired a US publishing company to help me. A dozen other writers and I signed a contract with this publishing house. Together, we worked on a book all about mindset and success principles. All I had to do, pay the fee, write a 2,000 word chapter, respond to edits and feedback over Google Docs, and promote this compilation to my email list. In return, the publishing house edited, published, and marketed our book. They also knew how to time the book launch, so it stood a better chance of hitting the list. The whole project wasn't cheap, but I was excited about becoming a USA Today best-selling author. That's a great form of social kudos. Now, before you write in and complain, I've interviewed dozens of authors who've hired agents and PR execs to do the same thing. Social proof, however you get it, will help you sell future books. And sure enough, a few months later, I got an email. It read, "Congratulations, you're a USA Today best-selling author." Now, I didn't uncork any champagne. Sure, it was great that the publishing house delivered, but I felt ambivalent about my new form of social kudos. I still wanted to write something only I could say. Not a compilation or a book aimed at the mass market, or some sort of book where I collaborated with other writers and a publishing house. So for my next book, I tried something else. Now, I've told you how I became a USA Today best-selling author. I've told you about the time one of my books went big in Brazil, and I've told you that my indie author career wasn't all sunshine, pina coladas, and book royalties. I also told you about writing a business book which almost no one bought. But what about the book I'm most proud of? Well, in 2020, I quit a high-paying corporate job to write it. And this book didn't sell a huge amount of copies. Didn't earn me a fortune, but I had fun writing it, and I consider it a creative success. Why? Well, I leaned heavily into this book. It's called "I Can't Believe I'm a Dad: What Every Guy Must Know About Parenting, Fatherhood, and Hair Loss." You see, in my early 20s, I became a dad unexpectedly. I didn't handle the experience very well. Cut to turning 40, now I have 3 kids, a rapidly receding hairline, and an armory of stories from the front line of parenting. So I turned my experiences raising 3 kids into a memoir. It's the type of book I wish I'd read back when I became a dad for the first time. It contains all of the advice I wish I'd known years ago. I get into my messy mistakes, like when I botched our birds and the bees talk at Disneyland. Now, rereading this book, I do a few things differently. I'd strip out some prescriptive advice and I'd let the stories speak for themselves. But this book still feels like a personal creative success. Why? Because I wrote something honest. And if you're gonna write a book, if you want to become an author, you need to write something that only you can say. It's not easy. Don't hold back. Mind your personal experiences. Lean into discomfort, and you're far more likely to end up with a book that you're proud of. And after that, well, book sales are a nice bonus. Now, I've spent this video describing my experiences experiences as an indie author of several books. Here's the painful truth about writing a book and why I caution you against writing one. Unless you're a celeb, athlete or politician, book writing doesn't pay well, if at all. Penguin says out of every 100 books, only 35 are profitable, and 96% of books sell less than 1,000 copies in their first year. Sure, you have more control of your self-publishing and selling direct, but Amazon KDP will still take a 40% cut. And most authors are outliers if they earn 4, let alone 5 figures from their books. That's below the minimum wage in most countries. Now, I've met a few romance authors who earn 6 and 7 figures a year selling directly to their readers. But chances are you're not writing that type of book. But what if you're not writing a book for money? But I get that. I wrote a few books, like my parenting book, for fun. But writing and publishing a good book still takes 6 months or longer. And how many people are actually going to read it? Let's say 1,000 people buy your book in year 1. Congratulations, you've done quite well. That puts your sale above most indie authors. That's not easy, but it's doable if you have an email list and you spend money on ads and you promote your book on other people's podcasts. Now, Goodreads says the average book completion rate is 60 to 70%. Probably because everybody's on TikTok. Assuming you sell 1,000 copies, that means only 600 to 700 readers will finish your book. Something you spend dozens, if not hundreds of hours working on. And that's before you factor in the time spent promoting it. I don't know about you, but I dislike those maths. 600 to 700 readers for 6 months of hard work? What should you do instead? Well, at the time of writing, 25,000 people subscribed to my newsletter. That's not a plug. Over the years, 100,000 people have subscribed and unsubscribed. I regularly clean my list, removing readers who don't open or read the newsletter. It only takes me 20 minutes a day to write a newsletter and share my idea. And I send daily emails with an average open rate of 30%. That means approximately 6,000 to 7,000 people read my newsletter every day. That works out at 20,000 to 30,000 readers a month, or over 200,000 a year. Sure, some subscribers are repeat readers and others are new, but whatever way I crunch the math, a newsletter is easier and faster for sharing a message with readers, with you. And that's all before I factor in how I can earn more money from a newsletter. For example, affiliate promotions, selling courses, and other offers. So, before you decide to write a book, ask yourself, what's your goal? If you want to earn more money, or if you want to make an impact, or if you want to share a message with readers, a newsletter is a much better approach. And if you need help with that, subscribe to my newsletter and I can get you started. If you enjoyed this video, hit thumbs up. And if you have questions about writing or self-publishing, ask me in the comments section below this video.